people. Hi.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome to another episode of Chasing Labels. And yeah, I know. I get it. If you're watching this visually, I had the wrong opening picture. It's fine. The music's what matters. That music leading us in.
Didn't even notice.
Well, you would notice if you were paying attention.
I was not paying attention at all.
I didn't change out the picture.
That's okay.
It was from the last episode.
As long as you get my good side.
We always get your good side.
Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you very much.
I would never do any other side because I don't control the camera on your side, so I can't ever get your bad side.
Well, at least you pick out the good pictures that I send you to use.
Oh,
that's the most important thing.
That's what I try to.
Nice. You have a good eye.
Oh, thank you, sir. Welcome. We're here live on the YouTube. Indeed. Of course, we're also streaming live to our Facebook group page and our X account. So we're there. We're popping up everywhere. But welcome to spy number 131 of Chasing Labels.
Yes, indeed. This is spy number 131, episode 131, however you want to refer to it. And it is going to encompass various announcements for the last 2 weeks or so, kind of working in the early days of this new format of the show. It's going to be interesting. It makes it a little more exclusive, selective. You got to make hard choice in terms of the things you want to talk about.
What if
you're so used to talking about everything?
Well, yeah, we're so used to just
throwing it all out there,
flailing, just talking about every damn thing that comes out of the labels' mouths, and now we're just a little more selective. So, but there's still roughly about 20 titles we're going to run through tonight. But before we do that, Josephine, of course, is always coming in hot. She wanted to share, if you have not seen the movie Poor Things by Yorgos Lanthimos, starring Emma Stone, Mark Ruffalo, various others, Willem Dafoe's in there. She created a song playlist that goes with the movie. And so I'll run through a few of these choices here. Evanescence, Bring Me to Life, of course. I mean, that's
most appropriate.
That's just appropriately just the title. She's got Tripping Billies with Dave Matthews Band, Slide from Goo Goo Dolls, a favorite. Black Balloon as well. Bright Side from the Killers. She's got some Vertical Horizon in here. She likes me for me. Of course, Pearl Jam, Can't Find a Better Man.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's a good one.
I listened to that a lot as a kid.
Yeah.
A little Alanis Morissette here, of course.
Yeah, that's a good one.
She got Real World by Matchbox 20. That was actually one of the first CDs I ever owned. Was that Matchbox 20 CD from the 90s with that song on it.
They do know how to write hits.
Yes.
And then Champagne Supernova from Oasis.
Classic.
Good one.
Classic.
So yeah, good playlist, man. That's literally like my childhood that you just made a playlist for. So
very much so. Very much that 90s, early 2000s era, that era in which Steven and I grew up in. Yeah. Which is a unique era of like the early days of like alternative rock and roll.
Yeah, well, when rock died, essentially.
I get that. That's the perspective you want to take on it. I always like to think of transitional periods, personally.
Wow,
it was the end of grunge and then the rise of alternative rock, and then in the 2000s we got more, emo rock and more,
well, when I say rock
movement and stuff like that.
Sure. Well, when I say rock died, I mean more like that rock and roll was no longer the forefront of music.
Oh, you're talking about more like culturally and stuff.
Like culturally, rock and roll was not it left the forefront of everybody's like popular culture. Like
that used to be. Depends on your perspective. I mean, if you watched MTV at the time, VH1 at the time, then you definitely saw that trend. It was
you get into the early 2000s, it was boy bands and it was R&B music. And
late 90s was like pop princesses, Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera, Jessica Simpson, Mandy Moore. Then of course you had, like you said, the boy bands, Backstreet Boys, NSYNC. More that I can't remember. But yeah, that alternative era was very interesting. Very interesting. But yeah, Poor Things. If you haven't seen the movie yet,
I loved it.
I really liked it. Yorgos Lanthimos,
favorite of the year, I think.
Nice. Yeah. Yorgos Lanthimos is such a unique director. Like the aesthetic for that whole movie, like it feels so weird, like you're living in a dream world. The camera's just not quite centered on things. It
Yeah.
feels so aesthetically unhinged, and the
Yeah.
movie is rather unhinged, but that's a whole different story. Hopefully, we'll get an announcement for the physical media release rather soon. I'm
I
curious
would think
when it
so.
comes out. I don't know if it's gonna be a main studio or somebody else. Is it an 824 film? I
I
can't
think
remember.
so. I think so.
Okay. So
Sounds right.
they may put out a special edition
I
of
don't
their
know.
own. They like to do that, like, way after a movie has come out.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, but speaking of movies and physical media, I guess we'll dive right into what's been
Sure.
cooking the last 2 weeks. We do have some news, some interesting news in the world of physical media distribution, really. One of the last, not one of the last, but one of the few big kind of UK brands, boutique labels that we talk about all the time, Eureka Entertainment, has now made its way over to the US in terms of partnering up with a US company for distribution.
Yeah.
And they partnered with MVD Media,
S-
MVD
s-
Entertainment.
Yeah, it seems to be the go-to because of course Radiance when they first started that's where they went. Um and I believe there might be some other smaller companies that have also used MVT as a distribution in the US. So yeah, obviously this is something we've been seeing as a trend lately. Where we're seeing UK companies trying to branch more into the US and find a way to cover more ground and start to release more Region A titles. They're going to start opening up to more people so that more people can get access to what they're releasing. So
Yeah, and even not only so much originated titles, but even just to get their product over here,
a
easier,
lot
I guess.
easier. Yeah,
I know
yeah,
we talk about all the companies that we go through, whether it be Diabolic or Orbit DVD or whomever, they get the titles here, but I guess this may open it up even more. And yeah, MVD has their own website where they sell movies there and stuff, so you can probably start getting titles from them there. You can also, get these titles probably from other places as well. But yeah, Eureka has been, putting out interesting titles over the last little while. We do get a quote here from our buddy Eric Wilkinson from MVD. He said, "MVD Media Group is thrilled to be partnering with Eureka Entertainment and to help bring this premium collector's label to North America. I very much look forward to working with you, the Eureka team, and I'm even more excited to be adding Eureka titles to my personal collection." Yeah, that's very cool. And I think they announced also, Steven, what their first two titles are going to be.
yeah. I know
Um,
you said you watched one of them, and I believe one of them's the 1927 The Cat and the Canary.
Yes, it is The Cat and the Canary, which is an adaptation of a novel. Um, and this is interesting because we had watched an adaptation of this sometime last year. I think Kino's putting out, someone's putting out The Cat and the Canary, I believe from 1939, starring Bob Hope.
Yes.
Um, and and it's the same movie, just obviously a different adaptation of
Yeah.
it. But this one's from the silent era, which is something that I found rather unique because I also found it to be really, really good as well. Like this was a really entertaining film. It was a film that, um, if you're not familiar with it, it's dealing with kind of like a haunted house type of situation. There's this man who passes away, and he decides that he is going to wait. He's going to have his family wait 20 years after his death in order for his will to be read to see who's going to get his inheritance. My guess is he doesn't like his family very much because that's such an
That's what
ass
it
thing
sounds
to
like.
do. Um, and he waits. And so after 20 years goes by, a bunch of his family members gather at his old house, and the will is read, and one of his descendants um gets um gets the inheritance, but the stipulation is that they have to prove that they are mentally sound by a physician in order to get this inheritance. And if they don't, they open up this secret envelope to decide who's going to get the inheritance instead. Well, before they can do that, the lawyer who has the envelope gets killed.
Mm,
So now it's like all of these people are in this house where a murder has happened. What's going to happen next? Who's
mm,
going to get killed next? Why did somebody get killed? Who is the murderer? Also, there's this thing, there's like this side plot where apparently someone from a mental institution may have escaped locally, so that may play into it as well. I really liked it. I like the black and white aesthetic of it. I really hope that this is going to look very, very good. I trust Eureka to do the right thing. They've been doing a lot of silent stuff.
Yeah.
You know, they just put out
A lot of Buster
Pandora's
Keaton.
Box,
Well, a
which
lot
is
of
a
Buster
great
Keaton
release.
stuff as well. Yeah.
Buster Keaton as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I trust them when it comes to the whole silent era thing. But yeah, I watched The Cat and the Canary. Yeah, so I'm kind of looking forward to
Cool.
perhaps adding that. I still have to add Pandora's Box to my collection as
I
well.
do too. I really want that as well. It's Eureka's. Yeah, I've been keeping up with Eureka pretty. You know, I got all the Jackie Chan stuff that I could get. And there's been a few. What's the one? I'm blanking on the title. The one with the female. It's a Western, and it's a female on the cover. All yellow.
Oh, you're talking about the
Come on,
Barbara
man.
Stanwyck. No, the Joan Crawford film.
Joan Crawford. That's it.
Why am I blanking on it? Because it's
come on,
also
man.
a movie that I want. I'm gonna look it up.
They're in the middle of in
know.
the West, and they're in a bar the whole movie, and I'm like blanking on the name of the movie. Come on, somebody that's watching.
Yeah, I
me.
know somebody that's watching probably knows it. I'm completely blanking on it. I have no idea why.
I know I could go behind me and go get it off the shelf, but
Johnny Guitar.
Johnny Guitar. God damn it! How do you
Yeah.
not know that fucking name?
I have
Steve?
no idea why I blanked on it.
How do you blank that name? I don't know. But
I
that's a good release from them. I really like Johnny Guitar.
I don't own that movie at all, but I've always wanted it. Eureka did put out a limited edition release a few years ago, and then a standard edition. Once upon a time, Olive Films had put it out in an early release, and then they put it out in, I believe, an Olive signature edition as well, which is now obviously out of print. So, and some places online are still selling Olive releases, still have them in stock. I know deepdiscount.com still has a lot of them, and other places as well. But you got to obviously look for them now because they're out of print. But yeah, Eureka, solid.
All right. Well, where do we want to move to next?
Let me see. I mean, oh man,
let's how about we talk about this? Was a little controversial. So Shout Factory put out this exclusive release of Unlawful Entry, starring Kurt Russell, Ray Liotta, Madeline Stowe, and it was one of them exclusives that only have a limited amount of, so people were miffed about this, and I agree. I mean, like, this is a big title. I mean, this is, honestly, for me, this is a movie I grew up watching. Funny enough. I had this on VHS growing up. It was something that I watched pretty regularly, and when it's one of the movies that I saw a lot, and it's like I almost forgot about it, because it was kind of into obscurity out there because it didn't really get a great physical media release. So now here it is, and it's getting a Blu-ray release, and now it's. I mean, I know I've heard that they've talked about restocking it.
Yeah. So what happened is that it was one of the Shout Factory's exclusives to their website.
Yes.
So it had a limited amount.
It was only
copies.
I think it was 1,600.
I think it was less than 1,000, less than 2,000.
Yeah, it was less than. I think it was like 1,600.
They've since upped it to 2,600 copies, because it sold out so quickly. Yes. By the time it was announced, until like to this episode, it was out in a few days, gone. Yeah. So they upped it to 2,600. The thing is, you have to wait until they get it in stock at their warehouse in order for you to get it. And they said that's going to take 2 to 3 weeks. And that's was something I saw like sometime last week. So probably still at least a week away, maybe even longer until they have more copies. Yeah, it's odd, the films that they choose to be website exclusives versus wider releases.
Well, I mean, we talked about the what is it? They have the one filmmaker's full catalog.
Roger
Corman's full catalog, and they've been just like releasing a bunch of his stuff. And them, I don't like it at all, really. I mean, that they limit. I mean, like, if they want to do exclusive, that's fine. Just don't limit it such a small amount. Like, at least make it enough that it can last a while. When you only do like a couple thousand copies and say exclusive, it's going to sell out, and then nobody's going to get it.
Especially a movie like this, a movie that you just said has Kurt Russell, has the late Ray Liotta in it. And it's a movie that they also produced new special features for it as
Yeah.
well. I
Yeah.
know a lot of these, website exclusives for Shout Studios have been pretty much bare
Just
bones,
bare.
at
Yeah.
least from my memory, and they sell them at a pretty premium price, but this feels like it's worth a premium price because it's a movie, like you said, Steven, really hasn't had a Blu-ray release here at all,
Yeah.
um, ever. So that's one
And,
thing.
and it's an underrated movie.
Yeah, and it's an
It is
underrated movie. It for those of you who don't know the premise, because it was a movie I had never seen. So
really.
Unlawful
Yeah.
Entry, yeah. So Unlawful Entry, it's a movie where Kurt Russell and Madeline Stowe are a married couple, and someone breaks into their home one night, and Kurt Russell like kind of chases the guy away, but of course the cops show up, and one of the cops happens to be Ray Liotta. And what ends up happening is they become friends with him, but he starts becoming kind of obsessive over them, like
Yeah.
intruding in on their lives,
Yeah.
like hooking them up with his guy that could set up a security system in their home. He's showing up at like certain like
He's becoming
events and
too
things.
close. He's
Too
becoming too
close,
involved.
too involved. It
Yeah.
reminded me a lot of Jim Carrey's character in Cable Guy, where he just
You
became
know, you said
obsessed
cable.
with
That is a good. That is a good
Broderick.
comparison. I was thinking of a recent film, The Gift.
Oh yes.
You know, with
Oh yeah, I thought
Joel
about that
Edgerton.
too.
Yeah. Yeah.
With Jason Bateman
Joel Edgerton
and Joel
directs that.
Edgerton. Joel
Yeah.
Edgerton becomes obsessed with this couple, literally
Yeah.
like this movie.
Yeah.
So of course things escalate into dangerous territory, and Ray Liotta plays unhinged
Oh,
maniac
one of the
very
best.
well,
Yeah, one of the
very well.
best. Yeah.
Um,
Um.
so this is a good release. It's a release, like I said, that has new special features, unrestrained realism, the films of Jonathan Kaplan, who's the director, a retrospective interview with the director himself, Too Tightly Wound inside the filming of Unlawful Entry, an interview with the cinematographer Jamie Anderson, and then Symphonic Intruder inside the thrilling score by James Horner. And it's a
Wow.
retrospective interview with musical historian Daniel Schweiger. And then there's an audio commentary from the director himself. So this is a nice
It's a
release.
good solid release.
It
Yeah.
should be more than like 2,600 copies, in
Yeah.
my opinion.
Yeah.
It should be a more wider release. But
Yeah. Barry the Tick says Shout Studio seems to ignore all the criticism.
yeah,
I guess so, because we've been complaining about it for a while.
yeah, it's like yeah. So get this release before it sells out again. I don't
Yeah.
even know since it's a site exclusive. I don't think places like Diabolical will get it or
No,
Orbit will
no,
get
it's
it.
not. Nobody else is going to get it. The only other place would be eBay, where it's
Yeah, I
going
was
to be
just
be
gonna say
sold
that.
for like $80 or something.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
is absurdly overpriced.
Yeah.
But moving on from there, Stephen, let me go on to one on my list. The thing is, there were a few slates this week, so I want to go into the individual ones before we get into the
Yeah.
slates.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I want to go with "Cry the Beloved Country,"
Okay.
which is being put out by Kino, and we had talked about it before, because it's a movie that we talked a little bit about when it was released by, I think, Studio Canal.
Yes,
Feels
I
like
think
Studio
so.
Canal release.
Yes.
The movie starring Sidney Poitier, Canada Lee, Charles Carson, and it's a movie that I remember talking about significantly, and because I rather liked it a lot. Very well acted, a very very good film. And it's a movie that apparently they remade it in 1995 with James
It's
Earl
been
Jones.
remade a bunch
That's
of times. Yeah.
yeah. So that's not the one I'm looking for. IMDb. Thank you very much. Um,
Well, the
but yeah, it's a
one you're looking for is this, the oldest version, I
yeah,
believe.
1951.
Yeah.
Because I just wanted to get the premise. So yes, in the backcountry of South Africa, Black minister Stephen Kumalo Kennedy journeys to the city to search for his missing son, only to find his people living in squalor and his son a criminal. Reverend Simangu Sidney Poitier is a young South African clergyman who helps find his missing son turned thief and sister turned prostitute in the slums of Johannesburg. So it's a movie that is very deep in like culture and family and things of the time of which it was made, and fascinating look at certain things. Yeah, you have this priest who kind of comes from a small town, goes to the big city, and is just has his mind open to like the doldrums of society, uh, of of Johannesburg and big city living and things like that. Rather melancholic film, you know what I mean, in many retrospect, but it's a great film. So if you can't get the other release by I believe Studio Canal, looks like Kino's going to be putting out one of their own, and I'm assuming it's going to have um, similar picture quality and stuff like that. Nothing yet in terms of um what the special features are going to be. But yeah, so Cry the Beloved Country was put out by Studio Canal in October of last year. So it
Okay.
already came out.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome.
So moving on from there, Stephen, where
Well,
do you
how
want to
about we
go?
talk about MVD's release of 1996's Sabotage, starring Mark Dacascos, uh, Carrie-Anne Moss, Tony Todd's in there, Graham Greene. Good cast. And yeah, so I was excited to watch this because I thought the cast was cool, and it was like the night I saw that this was announced, I was like, I need a fun action movie, something that doesn't have a lot of thought going on in it, and I got exactly what I wanted. Honestly, I actually very much enjoyed this movie. Just a lot of nonsensical action. There's a scene where like he's like in a hockey ring and he like slides down the ice and starts shooting dudes. I was like, yes, this is it. This is what I'm talking about right here. But it's a fun movie. It's about you have this like special agent who essentially almost gets killed in action by his own people, and then he survives. So now he's like working as like a secret service, and his they keep coming. They're still coming after him, and so he's trying to find out, get to the people that's after him. At the same time, Carrie-Anne Moss plays like
She's
an agent.
Yeah, she's an FBI agent.
Yeah, she's an FBI agent, and she's like gets caught up in it and involved in the investigation. And yeah, and they team up, and it's just a fun action movie. I enjoyed it. How about you?
Yeah, it's one of those B action movies from the 90s, which if you look at Mark Dacascos's like filmography, he starred in a lot of those. Like
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
he seemed like a B action movie star, and we have B action movie stars today. A lot of them you'll see in like straight to streaming action
I can tell
films
you
and
this:
whatnot.
Statham's starting into one.
His movies still get theatrical releases, though.
They do, but
They may come out in January now, but he still gets them.
They're turning into some damn. I mean, the movie's called The Beekeeper. It's out.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's directed by David Ayer. That's his newest film.
He's a B filmmaker now
It's
too.
weird because you've got. I understand what you're saying, the Jason Statham, but you also got people like Gerard
I know
Butler.
what you're saying. Van Damme has become a B.
Yeah, he's made the transition, but you still got like people who not used to be, but are the borderlines.
Sure.
They're A-list stars in kind of B-ish type movies, but the B-ish movies are sold as A-ish movies. It's a weird thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you've got like I just said, like Gerard Butler is in a lot of those types of action movies now, but he's a relative A star in B-ish action movies that don't get the play they used to get, but they still get theatrical releases, but perhaps smaller audience sizes and whatnot. Yeah, that's very interesting. But yeah, Mark Dacascos was pretty much B movie action star of the 90s. Carrie-Anne Moss, to see her in a movie before The Matrix is unique, just because I don't think I've seen her in anything before The Matrix, really. That was my introduction to Carrie-Anne Moss as an actress. She's gone on to be in other things and whatnot.
I think I'm trying to. Well, yeah, it's definitely Matrix, and then Memento came out, and then I was like, yeah,
that was after that.
Yeah. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. This might be one I definitely pick up.
Tony Todd as not Candyman is interesting, or even he's a horror character, but in a different way. He's just this like ruthless assassin in this movie, really. Like he's sniping guys from like miles away, and they have this weird kind of ahead of its time technology where you follow the bullet from like the gun barrel all the way up to its target, and it's clearly 90s CGI, but it's at least something that was a technique they would make look better later on in the genre. But yeah, it's definitely an MVD release. Like that just definitely feels like one of their types of films that they would put out.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So how about, do you want to go over to, let's talk some Kino here, another Kino release here that just came out a couple days ago. I got a chance to watch this and really enjoyed it. Kevin Kline in and Out. It's getting a 4K release. Essentially, this movie's about and this is what I loved about it, because it's got this kind of a little bit of like a meta-ness to it, where Kevin Kline plays this school teacher who he's also like coach. They're in a small town in Indiana, and one of his students goes on to be a big time actor who is now nominated for an Academy Award, played by Matt Dillon. And this was, of course, the height of Matt. This is like prime Matt Dillon. You know, he was
the 90s.
the
Yeah,
90s Matt Dillon. Yeah.
This was around the time. Yeah,
Wild Things.
Yeah, I would say Wild Things would be around the same time.
You know, what Something About Mary.
Something About Mary would be around the same time. Yeah, this movie came out in 1997. I would have been 10 years old when this movie came out. Just put that into perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, so he's nominated for Academy Award. So they're all excited. The town's all excited to see if he will win. And on the night that this isn't a spoiler. This is the kind of the crux of the movie. But on the night that he wins, he makes in a speech and then says that Kevin Kline's character is gay. And then so it turns his whole life upside down. The whole town is turned upside down, and then then the fun, the story begins. And so yeah, it's a very much a play on that, dealing with the gay stereotypes of people, that how people deal with that at the time. Some of that doesn't translate as well now, of course.
Right.
But
it's an interesting, first of all, this is the first time I had seen the movie as well. I know many people, when this was announced, it's like, oh, this was a movie that I've watched so many times when I was younger over the years.
Yeah, me
This
too.
is
I
one of my
hadn't seen it.
favorites.
Yeah.
I remember when the movie came out. Like I said, I was 10 years old, going to the movies all the time. So I remember seeing the trailer. I remember seeing the poster probably at the movie theater. Probably saw the VHS at Blockbuster. Saw the poster at Blockbuster. It just, the movie was around at the time, and it's an interesting movie. The movie, I feel, for me, is both hitting on a lot of contemporary things when it comes to the LGBTQ community, and also feels like very much a time capsule of like 1997 in terms of what people thought of being gay and things like that.
Yeah.
So the film kind of works in this weird, like, both eras. Like you said, like some of the things don't really translate to today.
Some of it, honestly,
but most of it does.
I mean, a lot of it does. But I was going to say, even the stuff that really doesn't, it almost makes the film funnier because of how absurd some of the opinions are.
It's like, wow, people really thought like this at 25 years ago.
Honestly, it kind of made me think about Tropic Thunder. Like even the beginning of the film with all the actors and like the show business side of it, like being kind of like over the top, made me think about like Tropic Thunder, which would come, of course, like 20 years later, or like 10 years later.
10 years later.
And like how absurd that the comedy was in that movie, and how they kind of use it a little bit in this film. Not as much, of course, in this film, but
there's definite satire in it.
Yeah, there is.
But it doesn't hit on a lot of the major themes as deep as I wanted it to, specifically dealing with Kevin Kline's character, who is having this kind of internal struggle of like, am I gay? Am I not gay? You know what I mean? What does gay mean to me? What does gay mean in society? It doesn't really delve deep into those things, but it covers it in a lighter way. And of course, those are still things that a lot of people in that community, of course, deal with today. When is it the proper time to come out? Should I come out at all? How will my family react? How will friends react? All of these things. The movie kind of handles all of that in a lighter way. The cast in the film, we need to mention as well, is really, really good. Wilford Brimley and Debbie Reynolds played Kevin Kline's mom in the movie. My parents, mom and dad. I thought that was interesting. Joan Cusack is his fiance, who he's going to marry. Her life kind of gets a bit turned upside down. Like we mentioned, Matt Dillon is in the film as well. Tom Selleck plays this like Entertainment Tonight Access Hollywood reporter who comes to town to kind of not stir things up, but just like get an inside scoop on things that are happening. It's Tom Selleck without a mustache, which threw me off.
He looks good though. He looks good without it.
He does. When I was looking, I'm like, oh, that's Tom Selleck. Bob Newhart, it plays the principal of the school that Kevin Kline works at. So it's very, very interesting.
It's a good cast, and it's a funny movie. There's a scene where like everybody in the is in the teacher's lounge talking about it, talking about like he's gay, and then there's the one guy that doesn't really understand what's going on, and then the one teacher's like, he likes dick. He's like, who's Dick? Like
Yeah.
he still doesn't get it. Like
A lot
it's
of Barbara Streisand reference in the film
yeah,
as
yeah,
well,
yeah.
because apparently, I guess, at that time, if you like Barbara Streisand, it may have been a clue if you were gay or not,
Yeah,
which is so
one
absurd to
of
me,
them,
you know?
dated jokes. That, but
Very dated.
yeah,
It's like,
yeah,
I like Barbara Streisand. I mean, Barbara
yeah,
Streisand's a talented individual.
yeah.
But yeah, it's a very interesting film. A film I think that does hold up in many ways, but it's also dated in others. But this is getting
A
a
4K.
4K release. Now, in 2021, it did get a Blu-ray release from Paramount. So many people may have that in their collection. I would obviously say hold off on getting that release because the 4K is going to probably be better and probably
I
cost
would
about as much,
assume. I would hope so.
if not a little more. So this was probably part of the Kino deal that they made with Paramount a
Yeah,
while ago. This feels like part of that catalog deal. So yeah, in and out,
like it,
like
like
it.
a lot. All right. Well, let's go over to Second Sight, who had a couple releases announced.
Oh yes, yes,
Big
yes, they
heavy
did.
hitters here. The first one we'll talk about is from a little director, Brandon Cronenberg, who's they're putting out a deluxe edition of his first film, Possessor. I have the 4K of this already, of course. But if you know anything about Second Sight, of course, it's deluxe to all ends. Rigid slipcase, poster cards, book. I'm sure a thick book, and not just a booklet, a book, a hardback book. I'm sure. And yeah, I mean, look at the artwork. I love the artwork on this. Cool movie. I mean, I've seen it the one time. It's definitely a surreal movie. It's definitely inspired by his dad, David Cronenberg. Had a lot of inspiration on Brandon Cronenberg's, kind of tastes. But yeah, what do you think of Possessor in this edition here?
I'm very much looking forward to this because I still don't own any release of this movie at all, and I really like
Okay,
it a
good.
lot. So if anything, this is primed for me. Primed for somebody who was sitting on his hands because originally, if I remember correctly, this came out like twice. They released a couple of times. Yeah, they released like a regular edition. They released an uncut edition, and then they released a 4K uncut edition.
Yeah.
And by them, I think it's Well Go USA was the ones that released it. So that was what we got here in Region A land, and I'm assuming that this edition is going to have. I don't know. It just doesn't say whether it's going to be the uncut or theatrical. I guess we'll maybe have to wait on that news.
Is it so? It doesn't have the full. Does it say there's more news to come on the features, or is it?
It doesn't say actually. It just says Possessor. Oh, yeah, it just has the 4K and the Blu-ray. So I don't know if it's going to have both cuts of the movie or not.
Yeah.
I didn't see that.
Usually when there's something like this and the director's involved, maybe in it, it's gonna probably have his whatever version he likes the best. The uncut version.
It will have new features here, a new audio commentary by Brandon Cronenberg, producers and special effects artists. Interview with Brandon Cronenberg. Interview with one of the producers. Yeah, there's a lot. There's a couple extra things, and then some archival stuff as well. But for those of you who like surreal, horror-esque, psychological cinema, avant-garde stuff, yeah, this is very much for you. It's kind of like a mind meld of David Cronenberg and David Lynch.
Yeah.
Thrown in with a little more like sci-fi in there.
Yeah.
So it's got everything that I like. It's got everything that I like.
I still haven't seen his second film, Infinity Pool.
Oh, it was one of my favorites from last
I haven't
year.
seen it.
Yeah. It's very similar-esque, but not quite as sci-fi-ish. But yeah, so Possessor is this one. What was the second one that they're going to release?
Well, the second one I'm super excited
Yeah,
about.
this is another good one.
This is one I'm really excited about, and maybe even can tell that we're gonna maybe get more from this director, I'm hoping. And that is Green Room, starring the late great Anton Yelchin.
Yep.
I've said this before, he has exactly the same birthday as me.
Oh.
We were born on the exactly same day. He's the same age. He was the same age as me.
Mm.
Yeah. Just
Yeah,
saying.
he passed away
Yeah.
way too soon
Way
in rather
too
tragic
tragically
circumstances.
too. Way too
Very
young.
tragic. And
Um,
this was a film that he was definitely known for. Obviously, he was in the Star Trek movies, which, you know, much larger audience than
yeah.
this indie film. But Green Room, directed by Jeremy Saulnier. Um, yeah, I have this on Blu-ray because I think it was put out by 824. So this is another kind of interesting super deluxe 824 film that's getting a nice release. To talk about gorgeous looking artwork, my goodness.
Yeah, I love the art.
I green's my favorite color, so
Yes, my
putting
favorite
green
color.
on the
Yeah,
front,
you
that kinda
got me.
gets me.
Yep.
Mm, it
But
got
if you
me.
don't know about this film, it's about a band, a young kind of punk band that gets a gig at a biker bar that ends up being kind of not just a biker bar, but more of a Nazi biker bar, but neo-Nazi biker bar. And so they kind of things go kind of south, and they kind of get trapped in the green room of the place while the neo-Nazis are trying to break down the door. And so it becomes this kind of survival movie, with neo-Nazis and
Yeah, it gets very
in a
violent.
punk band. Yeah, it gets violent.
Yeah, and the
Patrick Stewart
yes, is the leader of
is the leader of
these
the neo-Nazi
neo-Nazis.
group.
Yeah,
Yes.
this is a bar in the middle of nowhere,
Yes.
one that you never wanna venture to. It's one of those things where, like, when you get lost in the middle of nowhere and this is the only place, there's a reason why it's in the middle of nowhere. You don't wanna go there. But like I said, very violent movie, very good movie. Not only Anton Yelchin is in the film, but, you have Imogen Poots, Elia Shawkat, is in the film as well. Um, 2 kind of relative indie actresses that I've always been a fan of. Alia Shawkat, of course, in her younger days was on one of my favorite shows of all time, Arrested Development, um, which I still think is one of the best sitcoms of all time, particularly the first 3 seasons. The stuff they did on Netflix, a lot of people are very hot and cold on it. Um, but yeah, so that's Green Room. Excited about that. Steven, what other films of that directors do you want to get a second sight,
Well, I was gonna say,
please?
I'm hoping this means Blue Ruin, which
Okay,
is
it's
Jeremy
first film.
Saulnier's first film, is gonna get a nice deluxe release. I'd love to see that get a deluxe release. And didn't he do? Does he have any other films? I believe
I'm
he's done
going
at
to
least
check right now.
one other film. I believe at
Yes,
least
he did Blue Ruin, um, Hold the Dark,
Hold the Dark.
which
Yes,
was a Netflix
I
I
was
believe
gonna
that was a
say he did a
Netflix film.
Netflix movie. Yeah.
Yeah, um, he yeah, he also directed 2 episodes of True Detective, but I think that was the 3rd season. But Hold the Dark came out in 2018. Isn't that the one starring, um, yeah, Jeffrey Wright, Alexander Skarsgård was
Yeah.
in that. Um, yeah, that's gonna be the toughest to get a release.
Yeah, that'll be the toughest
That'll
one,
be the
but
toughest.
Blue Ruin, we need Blue Ruin. I
Mm.
like that. But yeah, moving on. How about let's see. I think we're slates now. So, um,
We're firmly in the slate game right now. I say
that,
we
now are we doing the full slate of Criterion? Or are we just doing a couple of them?
I'd say specifically want to concentrate on the ones,
I know the two that we're
that are
going to
different.
concentrate on, but okay,
Yeah.
we're going to start on Criterion.
Yeah, okay, we'll
Now,
go there then,
they had.
now that you opened it up.
Well, I'm about to.
Yeah, so
Uh,
there's 3 movies here that I specifically wanna focus on, and then 2 are re-releases, which
yeah.
films that are well known, you know?
Okay, yeah,
We don't have
we'll
to spend
just
too much time
mention
on
that. We'll
those.
mention the stuff, and then we'll dig into the couple that we're going to talk about. Of course, Lahane is getting a 4K,
Yes.
which is a big deal. I love that film, and anytime we get a chance to upgrade something that like the Pooh trilogy, something like that, it's always a great thing.
Yeah, that
Um,
just came out. People are just starting to get their copies now of the Apu Trilogy 4K.
yeah,
Yeah, Lahane, we did a whole episode on it way back in the Cinema Discovery Project days, kind of breaking down that film. An astonishing indie film from the 90s, which um, a lot of people discovered because of Criterion. I know I did. I think the movie was produced by Jodie Foster, or she had her hands in that film, I think. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, the movie is absolutely incredible.
yeah,
Astonishing work. So
yeah,
watch it if you haven't seen it yet. And
yeah.
if you
It's
have seen it already, you know what we're talking about.
super relevant, still relevant
Yeah, it
today.
really is.
From the '90s.
Speaking of a Second Sight, which we were just mentioning, Picnic at Hanging Rock getting a
Yes,
4K release. Second Sight just put out their release of it last year with that
yes,
beautiful golden box. That thing
yeah,
that looked like it was glowing in the dark.
yes.
um, So Picnic at Hanging Rock, the Peter Weir film, if I remember correctly. Peter Weir, the Australian director. This is a fantastic film. This was an early Blu-ray pickup for me from Criterion. It came
Yeah,
with
for me
the
too. I
book.
still have that Blu-ray. I still have the Blu-ray. Yeah,
I still have that Blu-ray as well, which
yeah.
is I don't know if this is coming with the book or not.
I would hope
'Cause
so.
yeah, because that was the big thing when that came out. It's like you actually got the entire book with it as well. Um, I have no idea. It doesn't say.
Doesn't say.
Does no. It just says, you get
Just
an
says
essay
essays. Yeah.
by author Megan Abbott, an excerpt from film scholar Mark Holthoff's 1996 book, Peter Weir, When Culture Collide. It doesn't say anything about getting that entire book with it.
Hmm.
Hmm.
That'll be interesting if they don't
We'll
include
know
the
when it
book.
comes out. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, Picnic at Hanging Rock, Peter Weir. Yeah, we're getting, and we know with Criterion that you're not getting new features, so you're just getting an upgrade on the film. So, but them are the two upgrades, and now for the newer films that have been added to the collection. I Am Cuba. I know you watched it. This is a big one. I'm hearing people say that they didn't think this film would ever get released.
Yeah,
Um,
this movie has a very interesting production history. Yeah, go on Wikipedia and you can probably read the whole thing. It's a movie that's it's a it's a co-Russian Cuba production, and it's very, very political because it came out, I think, in when did it come out? 1964? So, we're talking about in the middle of, the Cold War. We're talking, the strain between Cuba and the United States. This is, like, 5 years after the Cuban Revolution, that whole communist revolution in Cuba. Obviously, a lot of political things going on in the world, specifically Russia, the USSR, and Cuba, and the film is a series of vignettes. It's a series of astonishing vignettes, rather depressing vignettes, to be honest, and they're very political, very cultural. There was a lot of people saying this movie is very propagandish, and I can definitely tell that as well. But it is a historically, I would say, important film, historically interesting film, specifically the time in which it came out, and of course, it's still dealing with a lot of political things today when it comes to communism and things like that, and kind of the exploration of a lot of politics stuff. So, yeah, it's an astonishing work. Where did I think I watched it on Canopy. I think that was where I saw it, and it's truly a landmark of a film, and I would highly recommend people to watch it just in general, but don't go into it thinking it's like a narrative because it's really more documentary-ish, very artsy, very art house stuff. Reminded me a lot of the Battle of Algiers in terms of that cultural importance. It's talking about specific historical area and culture and people and time. Um, yeah, it beautiful too, just beautifully stunning film. Uh,
Dan says communism bad.
oh, it is. Well, oh yeah, I guess you could say that. In the movie, yeah, it's. I couldn't even tell you what the movie is commenting on talking about that. Um, but yeah, it's
And
definitely a
Dan,
work.
Dan, don't put this out here. You're going to make yourself an enemy. No, I don't agree. This is a pretty solid slate, Dan.
I'll tell you it. Let me put it this way. On Letterboxd, two uh, 2 out of the 3 films we're about to talk about, I gave 5s to, and I don't give out 5s a lot. Granted, I'm
Uh,
just me, but
well,
usually when it comes to this.
you are a Criterion kind of.
Yeah, but I don't even give
You've
out a lot of 5s to certain
nah,
Criterion
you don't.
films.
You don't. You're like me.
I mean,
You might hang on the 4.5,
it's
but you don't.
gotta blow
Yeah,
me
yeah,
away in order to really be like, "Okay, straight 5, no
yeah.
hesitation." I Am Cuba is this, and another one of the films we're gonna talk about is one of these as well. But yeah, so, uh, I definitely recommend this movie. But another movie that I was uh, so excited to get a Blu-ray release because I didn't think this was coming at any point in time, let alone now, let alone Criterion, is Dogfight. Um, I mentioned this movie a couple of times here on the show, and because it's only been available via, I think, a Warner Archive DVD, just a super underrated, overlooked film that I don't think a lot of people are aware of or know of, and but I think a lot of them are going to now. Steven, I know you got to finally watch the movie. What did you
Yes.
think?
Oh man. I tell you this, when I got done with the movie, I wanted it to continue. I was
Mm,
like, man, I want this. I mean, like, obviously I'm not gonna say what the ending was, but like the way it ends, it just makes you want to continue the love story. Like you want to see what happens.
mm.
You want to see what happens next. And but that's not what the story wants to. That's not the story it wants to tell. In this story, honestly, it feels like that there's this almost before sunsetness to it.
I was just gonna say,
One
this
of your
movie
other
feels
favorite
like that.
films,
It feels like a Before Sunset. It feels like a Brief Encounter, the David Lean film.
Yeah,
It films of that kind. This happenstance meeting of two people, two strangers, and they just happen to have this. You can't quite say it connection, and they just spend this very brief amount of time together. The two people happen to be played by River Phoenix and Lily Taylor, and they play this incredibly well. I believe the film is the film in black and white, Stephen? I can't
no,
remember.
no, 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 no.
No, it's just the
Well,
cover is here. Is it black and white?
yeah,
But yeah, it's a movie directed by Nancy Savoca, who was someone I had never heard of before. And it's set during the Vietnam era. This movie came out in 1991 for anybody,
it was just the film
curious.
starts out in 1963.
Right.
Yeah, and then
And I believe the River Phoenix character is kind of on his way. Is he on leave or is he on his way to ship out?
he's about to ship out, go to boot camp, and so this is like the last night before they ship out. The bunch of friends ship out. So the whole idea is that they play this game called Dogfight, where they
Cool game.
they all go find the ugliest girl they think is the ugliest girl in the area, and then bring them to a party, and then they kind of vote on who wins, basically.
Yeah, and I think that I forgot if it's like a money pot or something like that,
Yeah, yeah,
or yeah, it's a very cruel game
yes,
to play on anyone. And the young woman that River Phoenix picks is Lily Taylor's character, and um, he ends up feeling pretty shitty about it, pretty terrible about it, this whole thing. But they end up kind of striking up this romance, and it's really heartfelt, really genuine,
yeah.
beautiful film.
You can really see in this film how talented River Phoenix was,
Yeah,
and how tragic that I think this was one of the few last films he did. Actually, I think he died maybe like 3 or 4 years later.
I'm checking right now. I
Because
think
this
he
was
passed away in 1993.
yeah,
So yeah, he did. After this, he did Sneakers, Silent Tongue, The Thing Called Love, Dark Blood, and then Dark Blood was something I think posthumously they
yeah,
put together. So,
yes.
uh,
So a few
so
more
this is
films after, yeah,
this is like his fourth to last film, if you don't include the Red Hot Chili Peppers music video
yeah, yeah,
for Breaking the Girl.
yeah,
If you don't include that,
yeah,
um, but yeah, this is what he did. This came out right after My Own Private Idaho, or came out the same year as My Own Private Idaho, which is another, showcase of his acting ability.
yeah.
A very young, talented actor who sadly passed away way too young. Um, yeah, and the Dogfight, I think, is such an underhidden gem of a work,
Yeah,
not only from him, but just in
I had
general.
never heard of it, and I'm glad I had. I'm
Yeah,
gonna definitely
I'm
get
glad it's
this.
finally
Yeah,
getting a Blu-ray release, or just a release that's nice in general, as opposed to kind of a one archive, probably made on demand DVD. This is getting an audio commentary featuring the director Savoca and producer Richard Guay. A new interview with Savoca and actor Lily Taylor, conducted by filmmaker Mary Harron. Mary
cool.
Harron, who I believe directed American Psycho, if memory serves. Um, a new interview with cinematographer and production designers and a bunch of people who worked on the movie. So yeah, for anyone who kind of bemoans that Criterion doesn't put out, as something new or new features, this is very much against that. I'm excited about this. This is right there at the top of the list for releases that I want to get this year for me. Like at that Barnes and Noble Criterion sale in July, this is the first thing I'm gonna get so far.
Cool. Awesome.
So we do have another film we want to talk about. This is something I watched last night. This is a movie that definitely has its reputation as being one of the best movies ever made. a
Oh,
little,
and just so you know,
a little
Andrew,
high.
you sold Dan on Dogfight. So
Yeah, it's really good, really good. So we got the Werkmeister Harmonies, film that is directed by Bellatar and Agnes uh,
Sh-
Renitsky. Renitsky.
sure, yeah,
So Bellatar directed the movie Santango, which I know,
yes,
Steven, you have.
I own it and still haven't watched it
Okay.
because it's like a day long. So
Yes, it's a very long
it's
film.
long.
This film not quite as long, but this is a film that is very, very good. Like stunning work good. Like you watch this movie and afterward you're like, all other movies are ruined for me right now because this movie's so good. That happens to me very often. So um, I'm just gonna read this here because this is another movie that's really hard to kind of describe. So this mesmeric parable of societal collapse is an enigma of transcendent visual, philosophical, and mystical resonance. Adapted from a novel by Laszlo Krasznahorkai. Boy, that was a word. Um,
Sure.
Werkmeister harmonies unfold in an unknown time in an unnamed village where one day a mysterious circus, complete with an enormous stuffed whale and a shadowy demagogue-like figure known as the Prince, arrives and appears to awaken a kind of madness in the citizens that builds inexorably toward violence. In 39 hypnotic long takes engraved in ghostly black and white, auteur Bellatar and co-director editor Agnes Renitsky conjure an apocalyptic vision of dreamlike dread and fathomless beauty. So all of those adjectives are warranted. The movie's only made with 39 shots.
Mm.
So you're getting scene after scene where long takes are happening, camera movement slowly moving around to kind of, depict scenes in front of it. The film is like this haunted dream of this other world. It takes place in a, like I said, small unnamed Hungarian village, uh, perhaps under the guise of the USSR cloud of communism, um, or stuff like that. And it's just a dream of a film, and it's got this industrial vibe of uh, Eraserhead. It's
I was
got
gonna
that
say, I was
feel
saying it
about
in
it.
my mind as soon as you said industrial, I was like,
Like,
Eraserhead.
it's got that sound, that wind sound of Eraserhead as well.
Yeah.
That air tunnel vibe that's, like, haunting and just mysterious, and the film just moves from one scene to the next in a dreamlike manner. A lot of deep themes going on in it, a lot of stuff like that, a lot of allegories and stuff, but this circus comes to town with this giant stuffed whale and this mysterious enigmatic prince character who you never really see in the movie. They're mostly kind of like MacGuffins, but this presence of them that you hear about just like stirs madness in this small town. People kind of start going a little crazy. And that's obviously a metaphor for some type of something. I'm not quite sure what, but it's a metaphor for something. And the movie just builds and builds and just it's got the cinematography of, like I said, of like an Eraserhead, but also like the early parts of Wings of Desire. It's got that vibe as well. The black and white parts of Bruno Gans going around and just like listening to people's thoughts and stuff. It feels like that. Beautiful, stunning black and white cinematography. Some of the most gorgeous shots you'll ever see. So the fact that this movie's getting, this 4K restoration, I'm surprised this isn't a 4K release, or is
It
it?
is.
It is. Oh God, yes.
Yeah, it is.
So yeah, this movie's going to look mesmerizingly stunning, and the least. Probably not the film for everyone if you're not into that whole avant-garde art house vibe. Movies with no real plot to them, this may not be for you. But if you just like movies as visual artistic mediums, then yeah, this is definitely up your alley. Like I said, it's a stunning film. This is the other movie I gave a 5 out of 5 to. I was just like on
Really?
Letterboxd. I was like, this is
Okay.
unreal how beautiful this is. So yeah,
Damn.
that's the Werkmeister harmonies. So that's kind of it for Criterion.
Yeah. Yeah.
5 movie slate, you know,
You
two
did four
upgrades.
fingers though. You did four
Did I
fingers.
do 5? Yeah.
I didn't see the fifth one because
Was
you were
it
like,
off screen?
I don't know. I don't. But I was
Are you
like,
ki are
I
you
think you
being
forgot how
annoying
to
and making
count.
the thumb, not a finger?
No, I counted as a finger.
Okay.
I just didn't see it, but
Jazz
jazz hands.
hands.
These are spirit fingers. Remember that movie? Bring it on.
Yeah, bring it on.
These,
I
yeah.
do.
But all right. Well, let's head over to how about Radiance? Let's talk some Radiance.
Okay.
We
This
got
was the earliest slate of all of these,
yeah.
ironically.
Um, I don't have the info in front of me yet. So let's just pop up their first release here that I got here. Misunderstood.
Oh,
I know
okay.
you
We're gonna go
watched
with
it.
Misunderstood.
Yes. Tell us about Misunderstood because I know you watched it.
Yeah, so this is an interesting movie. It's a movie that it's about like familial relationships and stuff like that. So there's this guy who's a British consul, I guess kind of like a government worker guy. He's British in Florence. And what happens is his wife gets sick and passes away, and he and his um older child, older son decide to kind of hide that from the younger son to kind of protect him from that sense of loss of a parent, of a mother, things like that. So that's part of the story, and it's interesting because like it shows like the negative aspects of that. Obviously,
Yeah.
trying to hide the harsh realities of the world can have its back. It's repercussions, if you will. And it's a movie that I think is rather unique in that regard. Hold on, I'm trying to find out where I left. There's Radiance. So description: John Duncombe, the British consul in Florence, returns home from his wife's funeral to his two children, who are unaware of their mother's passing. Like I said, one is aware, and the other one is not. He makes a decision to tell his eldest son, Andrea, but hides the truth from his sickly younger son, Milo. Director Luigi Comencini captures the innocence and carefree moments of youth alongside the agonizing feelings of grief, creating one of the finest films about childhood, one which can stand alongside The 400 Blows, The Spirit of the Beehive, and L'Enfant Nu, a Palme d'Or nominee at the Cannes Film Festival and recipient of multiple awards from Italian institutions. This understood features remarkable performances from children and Anthony Quayle, from Anthony Quayle, who was in Lawrence of Arabia. So the film very much is about childhood, kind of the loss of innocence or the exploration of childhood, from the law, from grief and loss and protection, and it's an interesting meditation on kind of parenting or kind of lack thereof. If you watch the movie, I know
Yeah.
Stephen, you as a parent obviously want to protect your child at all costs,
Yeah.
specifically from the harshness of the world. Um,
No, I want her to.
oh, just throw her into the deep end, I
I
guess.
just want her to know. She needs to know.
And but the context around that in this film is that this child is already sickly and already kind of weak in that regard, so you don't want to harm them even more, which is altruistic, but also has its backdrops. Also, there's a lot of other things going on in the movie, but I really did enjoy the movie quite a bit. It's a very very good film. Um, but moving on from that film, the next film in here, I think is an even better film, and this is the movie The Shape of Night, which is a cool title in and of itself.
I liked it. Yeah.
Uh, yeah,
It's the sequel of Shape of Water.
I guess so. I guess so.
Sure. Okay.
And this is I want to say, of course, it's not telling me the audio. I want to say a Japanese film. And this is an interesting film.
It is a Japanese new wave film.
Yes, it is. It's yes. So a young woman from the countryside falls in love with a handsome hoodlum who pushes her into a life of prostitution. When his sleazy superiors catch sight of her, she finds herself trapped inside the gaudy gaze of city nightlife. Directed by Noboru Nakamura, a veteran of the Shochiko Studios' signature Golden Age family dramas, The Shape of Night was made as a reaction to the radical film styles of the Japanese New Wave. With its lush cinematography full of saturated colors, a lyrical tone, and its story of love leading to inescapable tragedy, it has been compared to the films of Douglas Sirk, while
Mhm.
also acting as a precursor to the work of Wong Kar-wai. Yes, two big names
I,
in
yeah.
terms of uh, people we know from the indie movie realm, really, but also people that we, you know, kind of admire and respect. I mean, I have a whole One Car Y box set. I have a bunch of Douglas Sirk films, big fans of both of them, and this film feels a lot like both of those films, but darker twists on them.
Yeah.
Like we said here, you're delving into the world of kind of the yakuza. You're delving into the world of like seedy prostitution, things like that. Yeah, rather unpleasant sequences in the film, and kind of just this trek downward of just spiral downward of a series of sad circumstances. Um, it's it's a really, really good film. Like, yeah, this is a fantastic film, and I wanted to see if I had seen um, any of this director's work, and I hadn't. No. But yeah, it is the work of the '60s, which is the Japanese new wave. Um, you get like Oshima is in that era. You get, of course, the late Ozu stuff was in that era as well, if I remember. Maybe Ozu was a little before this.
That's a little
Uh,
before, I think. Yeah.
yeah, obviously Kurosawa still working in the '60s. Um, but yeah, of course you got the kaiju films of Godzilla and King Kong and stuff like that are also part of Japanese cinema of that time as well. This is the other side, the more serious side of that. But yeah, very much a precursor to Wong Kar-wai, who was dealing with a lot of that stuff, a lot of like deeper thematic things. So yeah, this is a great film. The last film here that I wanted to talk about is actually a film I did not get to see. The reason being, L'amour fou, or also known as Crazy Love, is the movie is 255 minutes long.
Huh.
Which, if you're doing the math at home, Stephen, you're gonna have to help me out. Is
It's
that
like,
four
it's
hours
like
and
4
15
hours.
minutes?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, it is a very long film. um, and the reason why I would recommend this movie is it is directed by Jacques Rivette,
Yeah.
one of the French New Wave stars. And I'm basing the recommendation on this because it's him and because his work is you can trust his work for the most part, at least from what I've seen. But yes, this is a very long film, very long film. So obviously you may have to take a significant amount of time to watch this movie. Yeah, so during the rehearsals for the production of the tragedy Andromache, the leading actress and her director, a couple behind the scenes, can't find a way to leave their personal problems at home, and life imitates fiction, creating a real tragedy for this couple when the man finds comfort with other women, while the actress prefers to stay focused on her work as if nothing is happening with her partner. Kind of the put it like the ostrich burying their head in the sand thing. If I don't see it, it's not real, perhaps.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is Jacques Rivette, probably doing a rather interesting, interesting work. But like I said, 4 hours and 15 minutes long is quite a trek through
Yeah.
French
Yeah.
cinema. I will make it one day. But I feel like I need to build myself up in the Jacques Rivette oeuvre or his work to kind of get to that point. Like I feel this is like final boss Jacques Rivette. I
Yeah.
can use
Yeah.
a video game term. Uh, but yeah, that is it for Radiance. They did have, I think they had one Raro video
Yes.
released
But
called The
it's called The
Boss.
Boss. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a 1970s like Italian gangster film, similar to what we've seen with a lot of stuff that Radiance has put out, really. And of course, we got that Violent Streets box set from Severin, which is all like those types of movies and
Yeah.
cop dramas of that time. This is very much in that vein.
Yeah.
I did get to watch. I did get to watch it. It's directed by Fernando De Leo, the Italian director, who kind of operated a lot in that realm during that time. Got a lot of cool action in it. I can tell you that. It just takes a while to get to it. Um, so yeah, that's it for Radiance. Steven, do we want to?
Well, we got one more slate, but before that, there was one I forgot to throw in there
Ooh,
that I did watch, and it's from Blue Underground. They got a 4K coming out of Goodbye Uncle Tom. This was announced a few days ago, but this was a movie I'd heard about,
yeah, because it
and
was announced a while ago. It was
yeah,
announced like sometime last year.
yeah, and this is finally getting the release information out, and it's supposed to come out, I believe, April 23rd. But this film.
Rather
Did you watch it?
controversial film. No,
Did you,
but I know its reputation.
dude? This movie. uh, I to be honest, I don't go seeking out these shocking films, like Sallow and like Siberian film. Like I don't go and look for the movies just to watch them because I know I hear that they're controversial and I've never seen them two movies. I've never seen Sallow. I've never seen but this was I was like this sounded interesting. I was like the film's about documentary filmmakers going back in time to document slavery in America. And boy, is this movie rough. Like
Yeah.
and our buddy Ian Schultz, who's been a guest on our show, and he just done some writing for some essays and stuff and some releases. He was telling me about the background on this film a little bit, and that they used real slaves in this movie from Hades. Like there's some real controversial shit going on.
Yeah, this
and
is
it's
a
very
controversial film.
and it's a very misguided movie. Very the message that the movie sends, especially towards the end, like is rough. It's not. These are Italian filmmakers making a film about the American slavery going on. Like it's a point of view, and just the visuals and just how far they go with this. It's one of the it's maybe the roughest thing I've seen. And that's just because I haven't tried going to seek out anything else, but
right.
Maybe. But this movie is pretty shocking, pretty rough. And I can, in some ways, I'm like, I kind of want to own this because it's just so fucking out there.
But would it be a movie you would ever watch again?
I don't know. I really don't know. That's the problem.
That's one of the more interesting kind of aspects of, we do live in a day and age now where a lot of these more controversial, films that have been banned in places do have the DVD and Blu-ray releases, some 4K releases now. I'm thinking like Cannibal Holocaust. I'm thinking of Salo. I'm thinking of Serbian film. But it's also like, I guess it all comes down to you as an individual. Would you own it just to say you own it, or would you own it and actually watch it more than?
Well, that's the thing is that's how I operate a lot of times. Is I like to own things just to own them. But there is like. I'm very much interested in the rest of the context because there's like 5 hours of special features here, and there's like a feature-length documentary. So like, I really want to know more about this film, like
how it was made and why it was made,
and
like
think pieces. If there's any think stuff on it, like I want to know more about the opinion because this movie was so fucking rough.
Yeah,
like God. I watched it on Amazon. I rented it on Amazon. So
which is interesting is like you say all these like things like, oh, it's incredibly rough, but yet you can rent it on Amazon. It's like it all comes down to like the practicality of you can rent it for like what was it, $5 rental on Amazon?
It might have been cheaper than that.
It might have been cheaper than that. So
might have been
we're
like
living in an interesting age. An interesting age. But getting into I guess our final slate here.
Yeah.
We were actually fortunate enough to have Sam and John on from Indicator recently to do an interview and do kind of a recap of the year that was for 2023, as well as what's been cooking so far in 2024. And we talked about these releases, and that interview is now up on the channel. Steven got that up very, very quickly. And we talked about these rather not in depthly,
not in depth, but we kind of just skimmed over them.
Yeah,
we went over them and talked about how, kind of brought up the releases to them, and they talked to us a little bit about their impressions on it. So you can go to that interview, and I mean, it's a good interview as usual.
So so some of the things we may hit on may seem like we're saying the exact same things because we probably are. So we do have a 4-film slate from them, and this is their March and April stuff.
Yeah. They got it's 2. Yeah, there's 5. There's 3 in March and 2 in April.
You're right. I'm missing one here.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, because I had to click see more or load more on the page.
See more butts?
Yeah. So
see more, but you know the movie, right?
Yeah, that is Heavyweights.
Good job.
Thank you. I do know my stuff.
And Dan said, good interview, by the way. Enjoyed the episode. Good. Thank you.
It was very good. We for those of you you want a little behind the scenes look, we did that at 5 a.m. So it was 5 a.m. our time.
Yeah.
So we were
Yeah,
definitely on top of our game.
we try to be as convenient for our guests as possible.
Well,
So
I'm just
for
saying if
them,
it look
they're 5 hours ahead. So we're
yeah,
like,
I'm just
you know,
I'm just saying if you ever see an interview and we look like we may be tired, that's because it's probably
probably
borderline
because we
dawn.
are. It's either, or for me, this is late for me at the end of my day, so I'm always tired every time you see me. So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's the opposite for me. But speaking of which, let's delve into this. So we've got a couple of releases. We've got Santo versus the Riders of Terror, the Batwoman, and the Panther Woman. I believe those are the three for that are coming out in March.
Yes. Yes.
And then for the April releases, we got a double dose of Genre Lan. We got the Demoniacs and the Nude Vampire. The Nude Vampire is Genre Lan's, I believe, second film, and the Demoniacs, I think, came out in 1975, I believe. And yeah, just that 1974, actually. I was off by a year. So the March stuff, Steven, did you get to see any of these? Because I did get to see Santo versus the Riders of Terror
I only got a
and the
chance to see
Batwoman.
I've only got a chance to see the Batwoman.
Okay.
Yeah, which I thought it was a fun movie. I mean, like what we're learning a lot about, what we talked about John and Sam about was that we're getting a lot more Mexican films. And of course, very much a big part of their culture is lucha libre stuff. So even down to the Batwoman, the character that, of course, for our culture is named after the character in DC Comics, the Batgirl or Batwoman.
Mhm.
And she very much kind of looks like her, but in their culture, she's essentially a lucha libre.
Yeah, it's
You know,
basically kind of just like a yeah, how do you say it? Like, kind of like a masked
yeah, I
superhero
mean, it's their
wrestler.
superheroes. It's their superheroes. Yeah,
Yeah,
is
it's like they're
wrestlers.
superheroes. So and there's little to no connection to the DC character whatsoever.
There's not, no.
If anything, it's more connected to Batman
Yeah,
than Batwoman, because I think the backstory of Batwoman is that they're like a rich, wealthy person anyway that happens to dress up as this this Batwoman character to like fight crime, which is definitely more Batman-ish. Coincidentally, in DC Comics lore, Batwoman actually predated Batgirl by about 6 years, but I think Batgirl is definitely more popular
yeah,
in terms of a DC character than Batwoman, specifically, by modern day perspective. But it's a rather interesting cultural film. Um, and there were several Batwoman Mexican films with this character that would fight crime and fight bad guys and stuff. Just interesting,
yeah.
very
And
interesting
and,
stuff.
and I, for me, at least this film, it kind of brings on kind of like a spy movie vibe. It's got that kind of like a flow to it where there's meetings with government officials, and then there's getting hired by the government, and then going on a mission, and it's got all that stuff going underwater,
I was gonna say,
and
wasn't there an underwater sequence
there's like
in
there's
there?
like multiple underwater
And I'm
sequences.
like, that reminds me of one of the James Bond films where like they had a
Exactly.
whole underwater climactic fight, and it's notorious
Yeah.
because everything is just so slow because
Well,
you're
also,
underwater.
yeah. Also, our lead character is in a bathing suit the whole movie, so
Yeah,
that's
yeah, well, obviously, sex sells back then, sex sells
exactly.
now. I mean, it always seems to be something. Um, I could definitely say, and it's an interesting pairing with Santo, because
Yeah.
Santo is this legendary luchador, masked wrestler slash iconic superhero for Mexican culture.
Yeah.
And this movie is interesting because it combines the Western and Santo. So what happens is, uh, so um, there's this outbreak of leprosy in like this small western town or whatever, or this small, western-esque town, and and basically these people in this leper colony kind of terrorize the town because leprosy being incredibly contagious, they've got to like burn down buildings and they've got to like, kind of huddle and stay away from anybody from leprosy. So they terrorize this town to the point where they have to bring in the big guns. They got to bring
Yeah.
in Santo to kind of combat all this, and they bring him in, and he's like fighting, these people, these lepers, basically. But he's also like on horseback several times as well. They're riding horses, and it's a weird like genre mashup of luchador wrestling and the western. And you find out certain reasons why um, the lepers are the way they are and how they've been ostracized by the society. It's kind of a revenge thing and all this kind of stuff. There's extra things going on, but it's just the concept of Santo in the West is
Yeah,
interesting.
I love the image, the visual of it.
Yeah, and the makeup
Yeah.
effect works on those who have leprosy is rather good. Like they
Yeah,
give them like the facial makeup and their hands are all distorted.
yeah,
And when I think of leprosy, it feels like such an old disease. You know what I mean? Because of course it's I remember it being very biblical and things like
yeah.
that. So it's kind of interesting how they utilize that in a weaponized way in this. Um, but yeah, like I said, the mashup of culture, mashup of genres is interesting. So, and that this also goes together with the other Santo release that they
Yeah,
released what, a
yeah.
year ago? Yeah,
Yeah, it's roughly, yeah. They
they,
did the Enter Santo. You had Santo versus Evil Brain and versus Infernal Man.
yes,
And then there was also that Vinegar Syndrome release that had Santo versus Doctor. I think it was Doctor Death.
I think you're
Um,
right.
um,
Needless
so
to
we've been
say,
getting. I was gonna say we've been getting a lot of Santo
there
lately.
was yeah, so from like 1958 to 1982, there was tons of Santo
Yeah,
stuff. Because the actual person who played Santo was a real wrestler. So he would do like wrestling and things like that. But he would also star in these movies and kind of become this folk hero. And it's been yeah, so it was a whole cultural kind of phenomena in Mexico. And yeah, so between like 1958 and 1982, there was tons and tons of Santo related stuff.
and
Um,
another thing to mention about this particular movie, there is also another version of the movie on the disc, a
yes.
softcore version that has a different title. Um, it is
Where am I?
it is called Lepers and Sex.
Very,
Uh,
very direct.
yeah.
Very direct.
So
And I wanted to say back to my point that yeah, there were 54 movies between 1958 and 1982 uh, with Santo. So that's a
yeah,
lot of movies. But yes, you're right. There is and I believe this is kind of like a never before released version of the movie.
yeah,
Or it was a version of the movie that was believed to be non-existent or was lost or not or unfinished or something like that. And then they
yeah.
and they
Sam talks about it in the interview. So
he
it's
does. He does.
um,
But the April releases is where I get excited for. More Jean
okay.
Roland.
All right.
We're talking the Nude Vampire as well as Demoniacs. Two, like I mentioned with Sam and John, different slices of Jean Roland, essentially.
Yeah,
Different
yeah.
flavors, if you will. Different flavors of ice cream, different flavors of cake, different flavors of whatever food you want to use.
Gross.
Um,
You said fluid. Slice of fluid? That just
no,
sounds
food,
gross.
food, food.
I thought you said fluid. I was like,
God,
oh,
no.
slice of
I mean, I
fluid?
guess
That is,
different flavor drink. That would work.
do
That
you
would work.
slice drink?
I don't know.
I don't know. But
Savor
go
the
ahead.
flavor.
Please talk more
So
Roland,
yeah,
please.
so Jean Roland's second feature film and his first in color, The Nude Vampire finds the master of the fantastique combining his trademark erotic vampire themes with an homage to the mystery serials of his youth. Um, yeah, yeah, it's what a movie. What a movie. Because it's so stripped down and there's so little dialogue in it. There's so just little, not even little plot in it, but it's all mood, it's all energy, it's all aesthetic. It's all feelings. So a young man falls in love with a beautiful woman being chased by sinister masked figures at night. He tries to track her down and learns she's being held captive by his father and colleagues who believe she's a vampire. What this doesn't tell you is that his father is basically leading this cult because it's not a Jean Roland film without some type of cult going on, I guess.
Cults.
And
Yes.
they're like protecting this woman or hiding her away from another group that's pursuing her. There's certain mysteries that get unveiled towards the third act of the film, or why they're pursuing her, who she is, what she is. Obviously, she's a vampire and whatnot. So there's a lot of that going on here, but it's got the usual setting. It's got a gigantic mansion where they set these cult-like meetings and these rituals. It's got robes and random nudity for no particular reason other than because Jean Roland could do it, I
Yes.
guess. And yeah, it's his usual trademark stuff. It feels very much similar to his first film, The Rape of the Vampire, in terms of its avant-garde plotlessness. And then you've got his other film, The Demoniacs, which he made several years later. And The Demoniacs feels like something completely different. But it's still got that vibe. A gang of pirates basically attack and rape these two women, and what happens is that they are rescued by these strange native inhabitants of this mysterious island, and they're given like these superpowers to take revenge. And that's the plot of the movie. So it is kind of the rape revenge fantasy that we've seen utilized in many films over the decades now, really all the way up to modern times. But it's done in the genre Lawn way. We've got some supernatural powers in it. There's gratuitous nudity, like I said. There's a vibe to the movie that's a part of the fantastique. But it's more straightforward, more plot like. It doesn't have that avant-garde mysterious feeling, fantastic feeling of the earlier film, which I really like a lot.
Yeah.
So this film is kind of a little bit lesser of that, but I'm such a what's the word? A completionist, Steven? That I gotta get
Yeah,
all these Jean Roland
of
films
course, man.
eventually. So
Of
I gotta
course.
get this. I gotta get this one. But yeah, those are the two Jean Roland films. Um, but so we got more Jean Roland this year, and I feel like we're gonna get more on the
Oh, we
way.
got a ton. If you go to listen to the interview, we kind of get more of a closer to a number that it sounds like we're getting to. I'm not going to say it. I'm going to make you go watch the interview. But
Nicely done.
they kind of give us a number of where we're at when it comes to like how many Rolands we're going to get. So, but yeah, I'm excited for all that was announced here. I'm always I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of what they do. They just put so much passion in, and they got all that I'm looking for when it comes to releases, the features, the design on the boxes, and they're consistent. They're always
Yeah,
quality.
we
So
talked a lot about, how they've grown to extensively over the years now in terms of their popularity amongst us boutique collectors and just branching over here to the US in the last year or two, and how that's kind of taken off. And yeah, their releases are, like you said, consistent and consistent quality as well,
with
which is
consistent
really, really good.
quality, they're not always for everybody, but God, we could say that for a lot of the companies that we love. Vinegar Syndrome, which you could argue is the most popular company out of all these, puts out a lot of obscure and weird shit, but everybody loves them. Well,
Mm.
Indicator does the same thing. They put out some obscure stuff.
I feel like with a lot of the boutique labels, which I've said now a lot, is that um they put out such a variety of things for the most part that chances are you may come across something you'll like eventually,
Yeah,
or rather consistently, I think. You know what I mean?
yeah.
For example, if you don't like the Santo films or these Mexican films, you may like Jean Roland, and if you don't, they've got other releases from previous months or in the future that may fit
Dude,
your bill more.
I was talking to Dan about this the other day. He was asking me because he hadn't really investigated an Indicator. I said, dude, they got John Wayne films. They got a lot of classic stuff. They got stuff with Joan Crawford in it. They got stuff they got stuff all over the place.
Yeah, they've got stuff from, like I said, like classic Hollywood film noir things.
Burt Lancaster's The Swimmer is in the
Yeah,
collection. Like
they've got a
that's
lot of stuff. And yeah, those
the
Colombian
Dietrich,
noir sets,
the noir
beautiful.
sets, the Dietrich and von Sternberg.
Mm,
Like the William Castle stuff, the Ray
yep.
Harryhausen stuff. Um,
I'm just
you
looking at my
know,
boxes up on the shelf right
They
now.
got whole sets of John Ford.
And then, yeah, of course, British cinema, which is a lot of
Yeah,
understood stuff here. If you live in the US, one thing I found over the last several years that there was a lot of British cinema that I wasn't aware existed,
yeah,
specifically Hammer. I
yeah. I
I
was gonna say the
knew
Hammer
Hammer
stuff.
horror.
Yeah,
but I didn't know that Hammer itself was its own company with its own movies.
Yeah.
That's kind of opened my eyes a lot to it. But yeah, so there's plenty for everyone, and I think over the next 2 weeks we'll get some more, um, some some more releases will be announced. I think by the time we do our next episode, we will have more Vinegar Syndrome. Now that you mentioned it,
Vinegar Syndrome, Arrow will probably have some
the
announcements,
partner
I'm
label
sure.
stuff will be out.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll
Um,
have another filled up episode next time you see us in 2 weeks.
right?
But between then,
Yes.
we do have our next Unwatched Pile installment coming out next Monday. I believe that's the 29th at 9 p.m. EST. We're going to have our buddy Scott Saslow joining us. He's a graphic designer. He's been on multiple times. So it'll be fun to catch up with him and talk about some first time watches. And do that whole Unwatched Pile thing. Please go over and watch. That's a show that I really love doing, and it's one I want to keep growing. I want to get people on board with that and get more of an interaction with you guys as we're talking about the movies. So yeah, please go to this YouTube channel. Please subscribe. Let us know what you thought of the episode. Leave some comments. Of course, also you will get the audio version of this probably tomorrow. It'll drop really quickly, so you'll have that as an option. And of course, we continue to do other content. We have I've done some unboxings recently. We did, of course, our interviews. We're trying to keep them somewhat routine, and we'll have some other stuff. We got some other stuff we've been talking about. I think me and Andrew might do a back-to-back review of the 2 different releases of Mean Streets. We got the second site. I have it right here. I just got it in.
Nice. Looks nice.
And then, of course, Andrew has recently bought the Mean Streets from Criterion. Yep. So we might both do our own kind of review of both. Not saying which one's better than the other necessarily, but more like
what the difference is.
What's the differences and are either of these, or which ones are they both can be worth it. They both can be worth it, even if they're a little different. So, yeah, we might do that, something like that. But please, do all that stuff, please, and please spread the word for us. Please go to like Apple Podcasts or Spotify, leave a review, a star rating. That would really go a long way for us. And yeah, go to our Facebook group over there. We'll let you in. You can talk with us there in the meantime. And yeah, if that's all we got to say, Andrew, anything else?
No, that's about covers it. That's about covers everything.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for listening and watching. And hey, keep on watching them movies.
I know I will.